Cow finally gives birth when farmer discovers what it is he calls the police. John had been waiting for this moment for what felt like forever. His beloved cow had been pregnant for months, and he had been eagerly anticipating the birth. He had spent countless hours checking on her, making sure she was comfortable and well fed. John had even set up a special area in the barn for her to give birth, complete with soft hay and a warm heat lamp. As the days passed, John became increasingly anxious. He knew that calving could be a risky process, and he didn't want anything to go wrong. He spent every waking moment checking on his cow, monitoring her closely for any signs of labor. He was always just a few steps away, ready to assist if needed. One morning, John woke up to find his cow showing signs of labor. He was overjoyed and nervous all at once. He knew that the next few hours could be crucial, and he didn't want to miss a thing. He sat in the barn watching his cow intently as she labored through contractions. He offered her food and water, trying to keep her comfortable and calm. As the hours passed, John's anxiety grew. He had never witnessed a cow giving birth before, and he didn't know what to expect. He tried to remain patient, but he couldn't help but worry that something might go wrong. He paced back and forth, muttering to himself and checking on his cow every few minutes. As the sun began to set, John's cow finally went into active labor. She mooed and groaned, pushing with all her might. John could see the calf's hooves emerging from her body, and he knew that it was only a matter of time before the birth would be complete. The air in the barn was thick with anticipation as John watched, waiting for the calf to be born. He held his breath as he saw the calf's head emerge, followed by its shoulders. Finally, with one last push, the calf slipped out of its mother's body and onto the soft hay below. John was elated. He rushed to the calf's side, checking it over carefully to make sure it was healthy and breathing. The calf was small but strong, with soft brown fur and big brown eyes. It wobbled unsteadily on its legs, trying to get its bearings in the new world it had just entered. As John watched the calf take its first shaky steps, he knew that this was the beginning of a new life for both him and the animal. He felt a sense of pride and wonder, knowing that he had played a part in bringing a new life into the world. John smiled to himself, feeling content and at peace. Little did he know this was only the beginning of the journey. He was about to embark on a journey that would take him on a wild ride of discovery, excitement, and ultimately a newfound purpose in life. John's joy at the birth of the calf quickly turned to shock when he realized what it was. As he looked at the small wobbly creature, he saw something that he couldn't quite believe. It had a horn growing out of its head. John stared in disbelief as he realized that he had just witnessed the birth of a unicorn. He had heard of such mythical creatures, of course, but had never imagined that one could actually exist. He was sure that he must be dreaming, that this was some kind of hallucination brought on by exhaustion and excitement. But as he looked closer, he could see that it was no dream. The unicorn calf was real, and it was looking right back at him with its big brown eyes. John's mind raced as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. He knew that unicorns were rare and valuable, but he had no idea what to do with one. He reached for his phone, intending to call a veterinarian or an animal expert to come and take a look, but as he dialed, he hesitated. He realized that he didn't want to give up his unicorn calf to anyone else. He felt a deep connection to the creature, as if it was meant to be a part of his life. John knew that keeping a unicorn would be a difficult and potentially dangerous undertaking. He had heard stories of unicorns with magical powers, of their ability to heal and bless those who were kind to them, but he had also heard stories of unicorns with dark powers who could curse and harm those who crossed them. Despite his reservations, John decided to keep the unicorn calf. He named her Starlight, and spent all this time taking care of her. He read books and searched the internet to learn everything he could about unicorns, hoping to keep her healthy and happy. But as time passed, John began to realize that having a unicorn was not easy. He found himself constantly worried about Starlight's safety, knowing that there were those who would do anything to get their hands on a unicorn. He spent long nights sitting up with her, watching for any signs of danger. One day, John heard a knock on his door. It was a man he had never met before, offering him a large sum of money for Starlight. John refused, but the man persisted. He warned John that he was not the only one interested in the unicorn, and that he would regret his decision to keep her. John felt a sense of fear and desperation as he listened to the man's threats. He knew that he could not protect Starlight on his own, that he needed help, and so he made the difficult decision to call the police. The officers arrived quickly and John explained everything to them. He showed them Starlight, and they were just as amazed as he had been at her birth. They promised to do everything they could to protect the unicorn and her owner. From that day on, John felt a sense of relief, knowing that he was not alone in his quest to protect Starlight. He knew that he had made the right decision in calling the police, and that he would do everything in his power to keep his beloved unicorn safe. The police officers had taken the man who had come to John's door into custody, but John was still left with many questions. He wondered why someone would be so interested in a unicorn, and why they would resort to such aggressive tactics to try to obtain one. As he was pondering these thoughts, there was a knock at his door. John cautiously opened it, unsure of who might be on the other side. To his surprise, he was greeted by a kind-looking woman who introduced herself as a unicorn expert. The woman explained that unicorns were incredibly rare and valuable creatures, with many people believing in their magical properties. She told John that some people would do anything to obtain a unicorn, including resorting to theft and violence. She also explained that unicorns had been hunted and persecuted throughout history, with many believing that their horns had healing properties. However, the truth was that the horns were made of the same material as human fingernails and had no special powers at all. John listened intently as the woman spoke, feeling a sense of relief that he now understood more about the situation. He also felt a sense of pride that he was able to provide a safe and loving home for Starlight despite the risks involved. The woman went on to explain that unicorns were very sensitive creatures with a deep connection to nature and the world around them. She told John that by caring for Starlight with kindness and respect, he was not only protecting her physical safety but also her spiritual well-being. John was grateful for the woman's insight, and he thanked her for her help. He now felt even more committed to keeping Starlight safe and happy, and he knew that he would do whatever it took to make sure that she was well cared for. As the woman left, John looked out at Starlight in her pasture, and he felt a deep sense of connection to her. He knew that she was not just a valuable creature, but also a symbol of hope and magic in a world that could often feel dark and uncertain. From that day on, John felt a renewed sense of purpose in his life. He continued to care for Starlight with love and devotion, and he also began to reach out to others who shared his passion for unicorns and the magic that they represented. Through his efforts, John became known as a kind and compassionate farmer with a special connection to the mythical creatures that had captured his heart. And although there were still dangers and challenges to face, John knew that he had found a sense of meaning and purpose in his life that he had never experienced before. Months had passed since the incident with the man who had come to John's door, and life on the farm had settled into a peaceful routine. Starlight had grown into a majestic creature with a shimmering white coat and a long flowing mane. John had become something of a local celebrity, with people coming from all over to see his beloved unicorn. He had also become something of an expert on unicorns himself, learning everything he could about these magical creatures and sharing his knowledge with others. One day, as John was tending to the farm, he noticed a family of tourists had arrived. They had traveled from a faraway land just to see Starlight in person. John was pleased to see that the family was respectful of Starlight and her needs, and he welcomed them onto the farm. As the family approached Starlight's pasture, they gasped in awe at the sight of her. John could see the wonder and amazement in their eyes, and he felt a sense of pride in the creature that he had cared for so diligently. The family spent the entire day on the farm learning all they could about Starlight and unicorns in general. John shared stories about the history of unicorns, their magical properties, and the importance of protecting these rare and wondrous creatures. As the sun began to set, the family thanked John for his hospitality and prepared to leave. Just as they were about to go, the youngest child in the family tugged on John's sleeve and asked him a question. "Mr. Farmer," the child said, "can I make a wish on Starlight's horn?" John smiled and knelt down to the child's level. "Of course you can," he said. The child closed their eyes and made a silent wish and then ran off to join their family. John watched as they disappeared into the distance, feeling a sense of joy and contentment in his heart. As he turned to head back to his farmhouse, he heard a faint rustling in the bush. As he approached, cautiously unsure of what he might find, to his surprise he discovered a small unicorn foal with a shimmering silver coat and a bright, curious gaze. The foal looked up at John, and he felt a sense of awe and wonder wash over him. He knew that this was the miracle he had been waiting for, the happy ending that he had hoped for ever since Starlight had arrived on his farm. He picked up the foal and cradled it in his arms, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for the magical creatures that had brought so much joy and meaning into his life. As he carried the foal back to the farmhouse, John knew that he had been blessed with a rare and precious gift. He also knew that he would continue to care for Starlight and her new foal with love and devotion, knowing that they were not just valuable creatures but also symbols of hope and magic in a world that sorely needed them.